And so perhaps Ash Sarkar could reconsider her narrative about whether migrants are necessary or not to the country in light of this new information, especially when it turns out that almost all estimates show that migrants cost this country billions and billions of pounds. We will begin by identifying just how many migrants we have in the United Kingdom, and according to the Migration Observatory at the University of Oxford, which I believe is the most credible source on migrant information that we have thus far, it seems that 39% of migrants in the UK were born in the European Union, making most of our migrants non-European Union migrants. In 2018, it was estimated that around 14% of the country's population were immigrants, roughly 3.5 million immigrants from the European Union and almost 6 million immigrants from non-EU countries. Since the Brexit referendum, there appears to have been a slowdown in European Union migration. This appears to still be a net migration from the European Union to Britain, but the net number of European Union migrants coming has dropped dramatically. As you can see from the Office of National Statistics Migration Statistics Quarterly Report for August 2019, in March 2016, there was a dramatic downturn in European Union migration, although it is still a net positive. This also coincides with an uptick in non-EU migration. This is important because of one commonly cited study from Oxford Economics from June 2018 that claimed that European migrants living in the UK contribute £2,300 more to the public purse each year than the average adult, suggesting a net contribution of £78,000 to the exchequer over their lifespan in the UK. They also claim that non-European migrants make a positive net contribution of £28,000 while living here. By comparison, the average UK citizen's net lifetime contribution in this scenario is zero. This is undoubtedly what Ash Sarkar is referencing and is being hailed as proof positive that migrants are nothing but an economic benefit to the United Kingdom. Except, like all of these things, this is merely an estimate, and one estimate among many. There are, of course, many studies that suggest the opposite, such as this one from 2014 that suggests that immigration from outside of Europe cost £120 billion, or that £17 billion every year, as this study from 2016 found, was the true cost of immigration into the UK every year. But again, we would like to use an aggregate of these studies, so we will look at the Migration Observatory at the University of Oxford once more to give us a summary of what they believe is the overall impact. Here are their key points. The net fiscal impact of immigration is typically estimated from the difference between the taxes that the government receives as a result of migrants living and working in the UK and the cost of providing them with public services and cash benefits. Past studies suggest that the net fiscal impact of immigration into the UK is relatively small compared to the size of the whole economy, less than ±1% of GDP. Studies consistently find that the net fiscal contribution of EU migrants from the older EU member states is positive, while that of non-EEA migrants is negative. These are from the older and more prosperous European nations, is contested while giving some assumptions giving positive results and some giving negative results. The net fiscal effects of immigration depends on migrants' characteristics, including their ages, skills, earnings, and whether they have children. This means the current impact of migrant population may be different from the impact over the course of their whole life cycle. The Office for Budget Responsibility forecasts that higher net migration reduces pressure on government debt. This result is based on the assumption that a higher share of incoming migrants will continue to be working age than the population in general, and that they will earn the same as people in the existing population of the same age and gender. From these key points, we can see that migration is not at all invaluable to the economy. Any suggestion that migration makes or breaks the economy seems to be debunked in the fact that it is a very small percentage of the economy as a whole, plus or minus 1% of GDP. It seems to be that only migrants from wealthy European countries produce any kind of positive net result. All other migrants are a net negative. Given how most of the migrants in the country are not from Europe at all, and large numbers of those that are come from Eastern Europe, it seems inevitable that migration will cost Britain money. And of course, the Office for Budgetary Responsibility are making assumptions that suit their biases. Let's simply assume that the migrants will be working age and they will continue to earn the same as people in the existing population of the same age and gender, even though there is no particular reason to think that that will be the case. This is a table of the studies and estimates that have been done from the 2013 Dustman and Frattini studies, which found that between 2001 and 2011, the EEA migrants gave a plus 9 billion a year surplus, whereas the non-EEA are a minus 86 billion pound deficit, or the 1995 to 2011 study that found that the EEA migrants were a plus 8.8 billion pound surplus compared to a minus 104 billion pounds deficit. Then we have the Migration Watch study from 2014, which found that the EEA migrants were a minus 13 billion pounds deficit, and non-EEA ones were between a minus 116 to 134 billion pound deficit. The 2014 Rowthorne study found that between 2001 and 2011, the recent migrants from the EEA were a minus 0.3 billion pound deficit, and non-EEA ones were a minus 29.7 billion pound deficit. The 2014 Dustman and Frattini studies suggested that recent migrants between 2001 and 2011 were plus 15 billion, plus 4.9 billion, and plus 20.2 billion net contributions themselves. And the 1995 to 2011 study that they did suggested that EEA migrants were plus 4.4 billion in the black, whereas non-EEA were minus 118 billion. The Migration Watch 2016 study suggested that both EEA and non-EEA migrants were a net deficit to the tune of minus 1.1 and minus 15 billion respectively. And then the Oxford Economic Study from 2018 that found that EEA migrants were plus 4.7 billion to non-EEA migrants, which are minus 9 billion. The overall pattern of this data seems to suggest that, yes, migrants from wealthy European countries seem to be able to incorporate themselves into the British economy effectively and actually become net taxpayers into the exchequer. However, migrants from outside of these wealthy European countries appear to be a massive net drain on the economy, which would include Ash Sarkar's Bangladeshi grandmother. So it is no wonder that she is so deeply invested in pretending that migrants from non-EEA places are a net contribution to the economy, whereas all of the studies that we have suggest that they are not. Ash Sarkar is lying on the BBC, on British television, without being challenged by anyone on the panel or the host, without any correction being made. But as she said, facts don't care about your feelings. In a week's time, I will